Charles voided the Buckingham Palace offer, 4 days after the mail verdict notice, and the document trail proves it was never about the deadline. Here's what we're dealing with. A documented institutional timing operation, the entities at the center of this file: RAVIC, Associated Newspapers Limited, the Royal ROA, constitutional neutrality, and a mechanism this channel is calling the parallel briefing war. The filing sequence involves a deferred acceptance, a Thursday knowledge gap, a court circular that needs independent verification, and a communications secretary named Tobin Andre, whose fingerprints are across the palace's entire briefing architecture this week. These aren't commentary terms. These are operational keywords embedded in the primary source record. Here's the structural fallout. If Charles's team held confirmed knowledge of the Tuesday Associated Newspapers verdict from Thursday, 4 full days before the ruling, then Monday's withdrawal can't be framed as a logistical response to a missed Friday deadline. The deadline rationale is technically accurate. It's also forensically incomplete. And Harry's own spokesman made that case himself in a formal public statement, explicitly citing the Tuesday judgment as the withdrawal reason. That statement's on the public record. It doesn't go away, but here's what collapses the entire palace communications operation in a single broadcast window. Cameron Walker of GB News went on air Monday morning with what he called an exclusive. Harry had accepted the Buckingham Palace offer. Full stop. The report ran, and within 3 hours, the same channel's own newsreader came back on air and retracted it. Wait, what? Same outlet, same morning, 3-hour window. That retraction is a time-stamped archived broadcast record. It's the precise moment the parallel briefing war became publicly visible. 2 institutionally sourced, mutually exclusive narratives in simultaneous live circulation. One from Harry's team, one from the palace. Both in active distribution at the same time. And at minute 18, we're going to show you exactly why that 3-hour collapse window has direct consequences for the court circular verification. Because if Charles's diary was constructed after Monday's withdrawal decision rather than before it, the entire logistical rationale inverts. Before that, we're sitting at under 5,000 subscribers. So if you enjoy this kind of research, consider subscribing. It really helps us keep these investigations going. Now, let's get back to it. Strip the personal framing entirely. What remains is a constitutional risk mitigation operation, executed across a 4-day window, documented across multiple primary sources, with at least 3 institutionally sourced glitch points, where the public record breaks against itself. But with the full backing of his son, the heir to the throne, Prince William, the king this morning said, "Hell no, hell no." The door to Buckingham Palace is slammed in your face, Harry and Meghan too. Start with the numbers. 14. That's the count of legal claims Harry filed against Associated Newspapers Limited, the corporate entity that publishes the Daily Mail. Not one claim. 14. Tuesday's verdict at 2 p.m. UK time was scheduled to rule on some or all of those counts. 4 days. That's the awareness window. Thursday to Monday. The palace knew the verdict was coming on Thursday. The withdrawal came on Monday. In between Harry's Friday deadline lapse, his Saturday to Sunday reversal, his formal acceptance lodged over the weekend, and his team's Monday morning media briefing to what his spokesman's own statement described as, and this is his language, not ours, preferred media outlets. 3 hours. The lifespan of Cameron Walker's GB News exclusive before the same channel walked it back on air. 14 counts, 4 days, 3 hours. That's the operational architecture of this story. Everything else is surface. These propagandists, Brittany, apparently working within the royal rotor, but actually just treating Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as if what they say is true. And again, you know I always like to bring you the receipts. So I'm going to give you one example, because it's an example I've spoken about a lot. Cameron Walker, who is the royal correspondent at GB News, but it's actually BFF with Omid Scobie, who set up this whole weird, creepy relationship with the Sussexes. He actually went on air this morning. Now, here's why the constitutional exposure is the load-bearing element. The British monarch operates under a firm convention of press neutrality. The Crown doesn't visibly associate itself with the outcome of litigation against British press institutions. It's not a written rule, it's a structural requirement of the monarch's constitutional position. Charles, as head of state, can't be seen providing institutional sanctuary to a litigant on the night a verdict lands against a major British press publisher. The building itself becomes the signal. Had Harry remained at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday evening, and had the verdict gone in his favor on even one count, any public communication issued from that address would have carried the implicit weight of Royal Institutional Association, a video, a social media post, a statement. The palace would have had no procedural mechanism to prevent it. Harry's established communications pattern makes that risk concrete. Monday morning, his team briefed preferred outlets with a formal acceptance narrative. Coordinated, targeted, institutionally framed. That same operation running from Buckingham Palace on verdict night produces an outcome the palace can't control and can't walk back. The withdrawal was the only available tool. It was used Monday. The verdict was Tuesday. The 4-day window was the margin between a constitutional risk identified Thursday and a constitutional risk neutralized Monday. Revelation 1. The Thursday knowledge gap. The sequence begins Thursday, not Friday, not the weekend. Thursday. On Thursday, Buckingham Palace received formal notification that the Associated Newspaper's limited verdict would be handed down Tuesday at 2 p.m. This isn't inferred. It's stated directly in Harry's spokesman's Monday public statement. The spokesman wrote on the record, in formal institutional language, that Buckingham Palace has however been aware of that judgment since last Thursday. That sentence wasn't challenged. It wasn't retracted. It stands as a primary source confirmation that the palace held verdict date knowledge 4 days before the ruling. Now run the timeline forward. Thursday, verdict notice received. Friday, Harry's deadline closes. He declines. The palace's logistical rationale is now technically satisfied. The offer lapsed. Standard administrative outcome. Defensible, clean. But the timeline doesn't stop at Friday. Saturday to Sunday, Harry reverses. His team contacts the palace. A formal acceptance is lodged over the weekend. At this point, the palace holds 2 simultaneous pieces of information: a belatedly accepted accommodation offer, and confirmed knowledge that a 14-count verdict against a British press institution is 72 hours away. The decision made Monday wasn't made in ignorance of the verdict. It was made in full knowledge of it. 4 days after that knowledge was acquired, the window's closing. The timeline breaks right here. Revelation 2. The parallel briefing war narratives. One Monday morning, both institutionally sourced, mutually exclusive, Harry's spokesman issued a formal public statement confirming Harry had formally accepted the accommodation offer over the weekend. That's precise, deliberate language. Formally accepted, not informally communicated, not tentatively discussed, formally accepted. Simultaneously, in the same morning window, palace sources were running an active briefing campaign, asserting that Harry had failed to respond to the invitation and that it was now too late. Russell Myers at the Daily Mirror, operating with what the source record identifies as direct palace communications access, published palace-sourced language, stating Harry had failed to communicate his travel plans or send a response to the invitation. That language failed to respond was in active palace briefing circulation before Harry's team issued their formal acceptance statement. Wait, what? These aren't sequential corrections. These are parallel, live, simultaneous, institutionally authorized public records asserting opposite facts about the same event. Either Harry formally accepted the offer, in which case the palace's failed to respond briefing is a false institutional statement, or he didn't, in which case Harry's spokesman's formally accepted statement is a false institutional statement. There's no third option. Cameron Walker's GB News broadcast is the forensic proof of the moment this conflict surfaced publicly. Walker reported the acceptance. 3 hours later, the same channel's newsreader retracted it. That retraction segment is archived broadcast content. It's the visible collapse point of the parallel briefing war. The moment the two narratives crashed into each other in real time on air, the net's tightening. But 48 hours before that retraction, A second document entered the record that changes the legal stakes of everything Walker broadcast. Why this matters is because Cameron Walker then has shown he's not a journalist. I mean, trust me, I know that he used to work for me at GB News, but rather a propaganda parrot using GB News to do the bidding for the delusional juke. I found that genuinely toe-curling stuff. Revelation 3. The safe passage denial Victoria Ward at the Daily Telegraph is the documented direct pipeline from Harry's team into that publication. When she reports something, it's coming from the Sussex Communications operation. Her Monday report contained this line. One source close to Harry stated he had been promised safe passage in and out of the residence, which never materialized. That's a specific operational claim, not a general sentiment. A specific assurance, safe passage, communicated to Harry's team by a palace contact, then withdrawn. The palace's response was categorical. They denied this was ever on the table. Parse that denial carefully. Not the assurance was conditional. Not, it was misunderstood. Not, it was offered by someone without authority. The denial is absolute. It was never on the table. Wait, what? These two positions can't coexist. One institutional party is making a false public statement. Either a palace contact communicated a safe passage assurance to Harry's team without authorization, in which case there's an internal palace communications failure with direct accountability implications, or no such assurance was ever given, and Harry's team is publicly attributing a commitment to a source who either doesn't exist or didn't have standing to make it. Both parties are making irreconcilable factual claims. Both can't be accurate. The public record contains no named palace official corroborating the safe passage claim. No named Harry-side official identifying who communicated it, when, and through what channel. If you think that operational window is tight, wait until you see the legal firewall that collapsed just 48 hours later. Revelation 4. The Constitutional Firewall. The Daily Mail case isn't a privacy dispute. Situated correctly, William's historical litigation involved the publication of private images of his wife by a French magazine. A targeted privacy action, narrow factual basis. Chris Shipovith attempted on air to draw equivalence between William's litigation history and Harry's current case. The equivalence doesn't hold. Harry's action against Associated Newspapers Limited involves 14 counts. It represents a systemic challenge to a British press institution's editorial and reporting conduct across an extended period, categorically distinct in scope, ambition, and constitutional implication. Charles, as monarch, operates under a structural requirement to maintain functional distance from any legal action that can be characterized as the Crown taking a side in a press freedom dispute. The British press and the palace operate under a mutually acknowledged convention. The papers have a right to report. The palace requires that transparency to function, and the monarch doesn't visibly intervene in press litigation. Harry's 14-count action places that entire convention under direct structural pressure. Monday's withdrawal isn't a personal decision, it's a positional one. The distinction matters because one is reversible and one is not. Revelation 5. The Buckingham Palace address problem here's the element. No Royal Roa journalist has isolated cleanly, and it's the most operationally specific risk in the entire sequence. Had Harry remained at Buckingham Palace through Tuesday evening, the verdict window, the building itself becomes an institutional signal. Any public communication issued from that address on verdict night carries implicit royal association. There's no procedural mechanism the palace can deploy after the fact to strip that association. They can't issue a statement saying the building doesn't endorse the litigation outcome. The association is spatial, it's visual, it's immediate. Harry's communications pattern is documented and active. Monday morning, his team briefed preferred media outlets with a formal acceptance narrative, coordinated, targeted, institutionally framed. That same operation running from Buckingham Palace on Tuesday night, following a verdict in Harry's favor on any of the 14 counts, produces an outcome the palace can't control and can't walk back. The withdrawal was the only available tool. It was used Monday. The verdict was Tuesday. The timeline doesn't lie. The collateral damage A&D, Departures GB News royal correspondent. Monday morning, he broadcast an exclusive confirming Harry's palace acceptance. Sourced directly from Harry's team's briefing on air. Time-stamped, retracted by his own channel's newsreader within 3 hours. No correction on the record from Walker himself. His credibility with palace sources, if it existed, didn't survive Monday morning intact. Rebecca English Daily Telegraph Royal Road Ahead published the palace's deadline-missed rationale, confirmed on air to have omitted the Thursday knowledge gap entirely from her published account. Her report framed the withdrawal as a logistical consequence. Harry's spokesman's statement issued the same day explicitly contradicted that framing by naming the verdict as the operative withdrawal reason. English's editorial emission is on the public record. Her royal wrote a position creates a structural incentive to present palace-sourced framing as complete. Her Monday report didn't present palace-sourced framing as complete. Victoria Ward, Daily Telegraph. Harry's documented direct pipeline into that publication. Her Monday report carried the safe passage claim, a specific operational assurance attributed to an unnamed palace contact that the palace categorically denied. Ward's sourcing places her in the position of having published a claim that, if false, constitutes a material misrepresentation of palace communications. If true, it implicates an unauthorized palace contact in a significant internal breach. Tobin Andre, Buckingham Palace Communications Secretary, not publicly named in any palace statement. His role in the briefing architecture of Monday's withdrawal. The failed-to-respond narrative. The diary lock framing. The incredibly tiresome palace insider language, reported by Myers, places him at the operational center of the institutional response. His name doesn't appear in any Royal Roa report as a named source. It should. The GB News institutional record. Monday morning to Monday afternoon. One broadcast, one retraction. Same channel. 3-hour window. No named editorial accountability statement published. The retraction segment constitutes a public archived record of a journalistic institution being used as a distribution channel for a narrative that collapsed within hours of broadcast. And at minute 18, here's the court circular verification gap that nobody is asking about. The court circular is the official palace diary record, independently filed, publicly accessible. Russell Mears's palace-sourced report stated that Charles held a range of engagements and private meetings every day next week, framed as a structural lock, preventing any last-minute Harry access. The palace insider language was explicit. The king takes his public work incredibly seriously, and there will be no last-minute deviations to his plan. Here's the verification gap. Were those diary entries, those daily engagements, and private meetings entered into the court circular before Monday's withdrawal decision, or after it? If the entries predate the withdrawal, the logistical rationale is independently corroborated. If the entries were constructed or formalized after the withdrawal decision, the logistical rationale was retrofitted to a decision already made on constitutional grounds. The court circular is a public document. If the monarch had allowed Prince Harry to stay at Buckingham Palace, despite all of his threats over the past couple of weeks, I honestly believe it could have led to the beginning of an existential crisis for the royal family. So the fact that against his own heart, against what he might say his better judgment, but with the full backing of his son, the heir to the throne, Prince William, the king this morning said, "Hell no, hell no. The door to Buckingham Palace has slammed in your face, Harry, and Meghan too," I think is the beginning of the reclaiming. This is a verifiable question with a binary answer. Now, the RAVIC exposure. RAVIC, the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, is the UK government body that determines Harry's protective status. The financial quantum cited in the source record, approximately £3 million annually. The territorial scope question. Does RAVIC-funded UK protection create a funding liability applicable to Harry's international travel named jurisdictions from the source record? Colombia, Ukraine, Nigeria, Mexico. Harry's security dispute is publicly framed as a personal safety concern. The financial framing in the source record is structurally different. If RAVIC protection covers UK operations and that determination creates international precedent, The annual liability isn't a personal security budget. It's a state expenditure question. Charles can't overrule a rake determination. Harry's public framing positions it as a family dispute. The structural reality positions it as a government expenditure decision insulated from royal intervention by design. Now, the Associated Newspapers case, 14 counts, Tuesday verdict. The full judgment text, count by count, is the primary document this entire timeline requires for complete forensic resolution. What the public record already confirms. The verdict date was known to the palace on Thursday. The withdrawal came Monday. Harry's spokesman confirmed the verdict as the operative reason. The palace confirmed Thursday knowledge. Both positions are now on the public record simultaneously. Final structural observation. Harry's spokesman's Monday statement contains 2 consecutive paragraphs that read in sequence constitute an institutional accusation. Paragraph 1. Harry formally accepted the offer over the weekend once his security arrangements were in place. Paragraph 2. The palace has been aware of the Tuesday verdict since Thursday, so it's therefore unclear why the offer was withdrawn after formal acceptance. The word therefore is doing significant legal and rhetorical work in that sentence. It's not an expression of confusion. It's a formal, structured allegation that the palace's stated rationale doesn't account for a fact the palace itself holds. That statement's on the public record. It hasn't been retracted. The palace hasn't issued a line-by-line rebuttal of it. Think about that. The final calculation. Buckingham Palace confirmed Thursday knowledge of the Tuesday verdict date. Harry's formal acceptance arrived Saturday to Sunday. The withdrawal executed Monday. The deadline missed rationale was disclosed. The verdict rationale was not. Producing a 4-day documented awareness window in which the publicly stated reason for withdrawal is technically accurate and forensically incomplete by the palace's own confirmed timeline. Harry's spokesman confirmed the palace held verdict knowledge since Thursday. The withdrawal came Monday. The deadline lapsed Friday. If the deadline was the operative reason, why did the palace wait until Monday, 3 days after Friday's lapse, to execute the withdrawal? Let me know your theory on that 72-hour gap below. This entire institutional timing operation is running in parallel with a documented strategic shift inside Buckingham Palace, one that William has been positioned at the center of. The paper trail connecting Monday's withdrawal architecture to the broader realignment currently underway is the subject of our next case file. If you want that breakdown the moment it drops, subscribe now. The next file connects directly to this one. The thread doesn't end here.